So in December of 1977, East Germany faced its biggest crisis since the exodus of people from the 1950s. Coffee had gotten too expensive for the average person, and there was fear that unrest would transition into open revolt. Seriously. The Stasi wrote an entire report, a report on trends in dissatisfaction among the population. This was actually quite common for them to do. Like, what, you didn't think that East Germans never complained? And as a historian, this report is mind-blowing. Because contained in this report about why people are pissed that their coffee is being screwed with is an itemized list of everything that would cause the collapse of East Germany about a decade later. And listen, I'm often asked what my politics are, so the most straightforward answer that I can give you is I understand wanting to overthrow a government that screws with my coffee. So this report, a report on trends in dissatisfaction, was intended to be just that, a report on trends. One of hundreds the Stasi produced. Instead, it provided the first autopsy of East Germany. The Stasi acted, in their own words, as the sword and shield of the party, that party being the Socialist Unity Party, by constitution the ruling party of East Germany. So while the Stasi were an organ of the state, their job was to protect the Socialist Unity Party. If you're more interested, there are very intricate charts that go over this relationship. As part of this protection of the party, the Stasi were always listening. Well, not quite. I've produced a couple of videos about this if you're actually interested. To make sure that they could stay ahead of the problems. They then had their Central Evaluation and Information Group write up reports of what they knew and send that to party leadership. These reports tend to be written in language that would be considered politically acceptable, so you're never going to find a full-throated endorsement of capitalism within them. And they very much are in the vein of we are the best thing to ever happen in the history of ever. But they could also be very frank. Think about if you saw somebody walking towards the ledge of a cliff. You're not going to cite the works of Lenin for why they shouldn't be walking off the cliff. Instead, you're going to go, hey, don't walk off the cliff! And as part of these reports were the trends in dissatisfaction. East Germany very much had a culture of complaining and petitioning the state to rectify the shortcomings of everyday life. And these reports rounded up what was more than just one or two letters about people complaining that BFC Dynamo had won too many games. Once again, seriously. Which brings us to the coffee crisis. Welcome to my kitchen. Now, I've gone over this before, but the biggest thing to understand about the coffee crisis is that it was the result of a worldwide shortage of coffee and East Germany not having enough money to maintain its supply of import. To get around this, they stopped importing lower quality blends and instead made an in-house blend that you could best call a coffee approximation. Oh, and they also kept on importing the higher end blends. This is a surprise detail that will help us later. Now, this crisis had been brewing for quite a while. Thank you, I did enjoy that joke. And at the beginning of September 1977, the Stasi sent out a report titled, Frankly. So in it are a few notes that are going to become vitally important later. It costs too much, the quality sucks, people with means and connections can get the good stuff, and why aren't we being told the real reasons for the shortage? Oh, and the new blends are breaking the machines. Looking back, this was a warning shot. Problems were bubbling, but so far they were just that. They were bubbling. And problems in East Germany were always bubbling, but this time, they boiled over. And then by September 19th, things were more frank and, frankly, more dire. All districts of East Germany were reporting dissatisfaction across all groups of people, especially the common worker. Despite the success of housing programs, improved overall social conditions, and even positive reactions of those from West Berlin, the average East German had become pessimistic and resigned to the problems of the East. There was growing dissatisfaction and incomprehension about things such as the claimed need to expand while being unable to provide basic parts, expansion of stores that sold expensive Western goods, the elimination of low-priced coffee in restaurants, saving measures at the lowest levels while the upper levels continued unabated, a completely inadequate and partly incomprehensible information policy that expresses insufficient trust of the party and state leadership in the working people. Further, workers no longer trusted the media of the party. Those with Western connections are gathering more and more influence in society as well, which is important because workers had noticed that the classless society had created its own stratification. Workers and pensioners without any access to Western goods or money forced to bear the brunt of austerity. Those with higher incomes who could skirt austerity via access to Western goods and stores. And privileged individuals and high officials who shop in special shops, drive expensive Western cars, and are not affected in any way by any austerity measures. In effect, a gulf had been created in East Germany between those who had and those who did not have any privilege. And gee, I wonder if there is a system that teaches what should be done if such a situation arises. In any case, it doesn't matter, according to the Stasi at least, because all the problems are actually the result of Western propaganda. It doesn't make any sense for the workers to be this angry. Here's the thing. When everything is going good, when things are relatively stable, when everybody's wants and needs are basically being met, areas where life is tough are generally overlooked. Yes, there will always be people on the fringe who complain, but they don't understand how good things are, do they? When things are bad, however, when just one part of that equilibrium has been upset, then the average person isn't going to care about the goals of the system. They're not going to care about how well it has functioned in the past. They're not going to care about things as lofty as ideals. They just want their stability. And East Germany had just discovered that their stability was a house of cards. And it was only going to get worse because by this point, East Germany had transitioned to a more liberal, market-based economy. This was an effort to get more things into their citizens' hands. Except they weren't great at getting this done. And it cost money that East Germany didn't have to make this happen. But they had to, because a coffee shortage has almost just upset the entire country. So by early 1953, East Germany had become dependent upon West German credit to avoid going bankrupt. Hi, me from the past. 1983 is when East Germany became dependent upon West German credit to stop them from going bankrupt. Well, something else very important to East German history did happen in 1953. We're about 30 years in the future, okay? Further, the average citizen had started to notice that their quality of life wasn't increasing. And what's more, what they had previously overlooked couldn't be ignored anymore. This all gets us up to 1989, which is when East Germany is just lurching all over the place in an attempt to quell what is becoming status quo dissent. Citizens had had enough and were fleeing to the West in tens of thousands at a rate not seen since the 50s. And of those, the Stasi set about interviewing those people who wanted out. Because these many people fleeing are fleeing a collapsing state. When it's only a few hundred a year, those are just dissatisfied groups. But when it's a number this big, it's a trend. So the Stasi needs to know, why are these people leaving? In fact, they want to know, why were so many people leaving? So they investigated and wrote a very frank report that laid out the perceived failures of these people of the East German state. And tell me if any of these seem familiar. Dissatisfaction with the supply situation, incomprehension for deficiencies in medical care, unsatisfactory working conditions, incomprehension about the media policy of the German Democratic Republic. In particular, it highlights the largest criticism was in care of the population, and the inability to provide high-quality consumer goods, fresh fruit and vegetables, and the Thousand Little Thing campaign in general. It also highlights that the people leaving weren't dissatisfied with socialism, but faced with the shortages of the system, they simply didn't care anymore. The report makes it very clear throughout that the people had given up on the belief that state functionaries, that the state itself could even do anything to rectify this situation, and it was simply better to leave than face more broken promises from the state. Everything the Stasi had noticed in September of 1977 hadn't been solved. In fact, everything had gotten worse. Except this time, people simply left. So the oddest part of that 1989 report, especially for Westerners that only have a pop culture understanding of the Cold War, is the Stasi noticed something that would seem out of place to those with only that pop culture understanding. The people leaving, by and large, didn't have a hostile attitude towards East Germany. They had just given up on the Socialist Unity Party. And that's a feeling that was shared by those who stayed. The protest movements that popped up all around East Germany weren't hostile to the idea of an East German state existing. They had become openly hostile to the Socialist Unity Party, to the people running that state. The crowds at the biggest protests in East German history, by and large, weren't rejecting socialism. They were just rejecting a badly ran government. They were rejecting a badly ran government that could only be ran by one party, the Socialist Unity Party. And they had come to see that party as ruining the worker state that had been promised to them.